So today I'm going to be learning how to make a no-knead herb bread. Traditionally when you make bread, during the process you proof your bread, you then bake. With this recipe from Jeff Hertzberg and Zoe Francois, there's absolutely no need to knead your bread. The process really is to mix your flour mix, let the dough rest, and you then leave it in the fridge to rest overnight, or I believe within 14 days. So very straightforward. Very curious as to why this process actually works. The second thing that's interesting about the recipe as well is instead of using your traditional bread flour to make the bread, we're going to be using a plain flour. And that's striking very interesting because when you make bread, to get that fluffiness, stretched loaf fluff inside, the reason why you use bread flour is because bread flour contains more protein than plain flour. So with this as well, I'm not sure what the technical reason is why it works according to the recipe, but it does. If I was to guess, it's because you're leaving the dough to rest a little bit, and that activity of the yeast working with the proteins and the cells that exist in a plain flour just stretches it enough. I'm probably just mumbling about nonsense, but that's how it works in my head anyways. Zoe has a great Instagram channel. This lady bakes like a goddess. I cannot recommend her enough, hence why I got her a recipe or cookbook rather. Yeah, so let's make some herb bread, no-knead method. Okay, to start us off, I've got about 3 cups of warm water in here. I'm going to add it to my plastic bowl. So this is where I'm going to do my mixing and let my dough rise. I'm using warm water because warm water helps with activating yeast. So I'm just going to add that. So I've got about 1 tablespoon of yeast in here. Another tablespoon to a tablespoon and a half of salt. So about 2 teaspoons of fresh thyme and a teaspoon of rosemary. You can also use dried, but because dried is a lot more concentrated, you just want to reduce the additions by half. So I'm just going to add that and give that a mix with a wooden spoon. And I've got about 900 grams of plain flour, like I mentioned before. So I'm just going to pour all that into our water mix. I'm just going to give that a stir. Pretty much right now my objective is to make sure I don't have dried clumps of flour around my dough. Effort-wise, you just need to make sure your arms are in shape. Yeah, that pretty much looks good. So the next step really is to just cover with a lid, and we're not actually going to close this tightly. We're just going to leave a little bit of a gap, just like that. And we're going to let this rest for about 2 hours, and we'll come back and see how much it's risen. So it's been 2 hours and our dough hasn't just doubled in size, it's basically tripled in size, as you can see, which is amazing. Left now is just for me to refrigerate my dough in my fridge, and we should have some fresh dough for baking tomorrow morning. So it's the next day now, and before I start attending to my dough, the first thing I'm actually going to do is use my pizza reel, and I'm just going to spread some cornmeal or semolina if you have that. I actually have semolina, so I'm just going to spread some semolina on my pizza reel here. What that's basically going to do is stop my dough from sticking. So once I roll up my dough, I'm going to place it on the pizza reel and then slide it on my baking stone or baking tray. Just going to put that aside. So we have our risen dough here. As you can see, all the gluten strands have basically expanded and formed nicely. According to the recipe, I just put some plain flour on top. So I'm moving my pizza reel just beside me here. I've got a bowl of plain flour here, and you'll see what I'm going to do in a second. I'm going to get my hands dirty. I think adding the plain flour on top of the dough makes it a lot easier to handle the dough. Prevents it from sticking on your hands. I'm just going to tear off a piece there, the size of like an orange or grapefruit, and I'm then going to put it in my bowl of flour over here and put some on top as well. What I want to do now is just roll it up. I'm not stretching it too much, just rolling it into a ball of some sort. And that's it. You're just basically trying to tuck as I'm turning it, I'm tucking it's like I'm folding it inwards like that. I just keep turning my hand. And forms a nice ball. And there you have it. I should honestly just put 3 loaves on my pizza reel, but I'm slightly impatient this morning, so I'm just going to leave it as 4. And what I'm going to just do at this point is to let it rest for 40 minutes. In the meantime, I'm going to preheat my oven, and I'm going to heat up my pizza stone. Okay, so it's been 40 minutes. My dough has rested and has risen slowly. As you can see, they've actually started to touch each other, which isn't great. I'm going to be very careful in trying my best to separate them a little bit. But the first thing I'm going to do now is just dust my bread with some flour. So I'm now going to slice each of my loaves. Okay, not bad. The next thing is into the oven. Into the oven our loaves go. Oh no. This hasn't turned out exactly as I wanted. That was funny. So that did not so go according to plan. I think the biggest lesson from today is patience. What I should have done was just to put 1 loaf or 2 loaves max on my pizza reel. Obviously I learned it the hard way. I'm going to change the name of the video to the irregular herb bread because of its shape. My flat has been smelling really nice, almost like a floral herby smell and sense. Color wise, has a nice dark rich color to it, nice crust. I don't know if you can hear that. I guess it's just to taste it now. I have a knife here already, but do you know I'm just going to tear into the bread. We're just going to use our hands. Okay. Yeah, that's a nice rich smell of just like fresh herbs. So it doesn't feel like your traditional, I think it still needs to cool down a little bit, but it doesn't feel like your standard white bread loaf. You can tell that there isn't a lot of, it's not stretchy because of the gluten strands, but still, it's different. It doesn't mean it's it's not as good. Yeah, so I'm just going to taste it on its own first of all. Yeah, that's good. That's a good loaf of bread. Yeah, it's not as rich as a standard white loaf. I'm going to have it with some olive oil, some extra virgin olive oil and balsamic vinegar. Oh my god. No, that's good. Speaking about the herbs, specifically about the rosemary, it's not as strong as I imagined. I was almost thinking of a focaccia when you have rosemary on top. That very strong scent and taste. This is a lot more subtle to it, which is still good as well. The fact that you don't need to knead the bread, or you don't need to knead the dough rather, I think that's amazing, because you can literally just whip it up 5 minutes, do your mixing, let it rest, let it rise, dump it in the fridge. I can leave it in the fridge for 2 weeks, which is great. So whenever you just want to make a piece of loaf, just do the same process of folding it out and letting it rest, throwing it in the oven, and you have your bread in less than an hour. So I think that's so underrated. Bread making is like you're giving birth to life. That's how I see it. I love bread. I think that's it for today. I think I'm glad I continued. Very, very stupid mistake from my end, but such is life. That's the whole point of cooking, right? You make mistakes and you kind of just work with the flow. Anyways, I'll catch you guys next time. As always, like, subscribe. Catch you guys next time.